the extra joint compound that you have going on. And you don't want to push the wet rag in the hole, especially in this like bigger hole, but you just run right over the surface because you don't want to have that extra film around the hole either. So there, we got to clean that up, and we kind of went around the whole apartment there. So that's how you fill holes. And if you had other drywall work, the big thing too is making sure you do drywall. If you have to texture the wall, or if you have other bigger gaps and stuff that need to be done, it's all important process of prepping the wall, because once again, you want that wall to look, a little indentation there that we're kind of filling up there, and you know, it's a little older project, but it's still, you know, our goal is to have this apartment looking good. A couple other holes here. So the whole apartment really, you go through and take your time, do a little prep work, because our goal is that, you know, when we're done doing this apartment, want it looking good. You know, we're contracting our services out to this owner, and realistically, if we don't do it right, we've got to come back and do it. So we got our prep done there. Now, if you have two people that are working in this apartment, it's pretty easy. You kind of get your perimeters. One's a roller, one's a brusher. And in this particular case, I put my 1/2-inch nap on here. We could go down. We got a little bit of texture on this wall. It was flat, but throughout the years, we kind of have a little texture. So a 1/2-inch nap will work on here. And then I grab my paint stick. And I grab my grate. I get that on there nice and secure. We've got our grate here. Basically, we drop that right into the bucket. Now, in doing the rolling, typically you can roll the wall out almost a lot faster than you can brush. Now, the key on the roller in using the grate system is you got two sides to the roller. You got the end side here, and you got the one with the wire on it. The key to this, it's a little trickier when the bucket's full of paint. When it's full of paint, you got to carefully do it. But when you're running this roller into there, the key is to keep the metal frame of this roller away from the side of the bucket. If you start running this on the side of the bucket, you start running into problems because the paint starts dripping off of here, and then you got to kind of stop and clean up. So the goal is to keep this side, got some on my hand here, keep this side of the roller right on the edge of the bucket. And then you notice I got my leapfrog system here. I got the 3 rollers, they're all combined. So you can't do a pumping action. And once again, I'm keeping the roller tight to that side. You can't do a pumping action. You notice I got a little carried away there. It's still, I kind of pound it into the paint. I keep my metal frame, and I don't know if you want to zoom up in here. I don't know if we can get that. But I'm keeping it kind of tilted this side so that my frame is not hitting the side of the bucket. So I kind of pump it down into the paint there. Now when I take it out of the paint, I do a little twist on here. I follow my tarps, and then I always go with an upward stroke. Now basically, when you paint, you pretty much divide the wall in half. You pretty much do put a line right in the middle here. You do 1/2 up and 1/2 down. And as I mentioned before, one of the biggest errors in painting is that they try to run their roller too dry. Once again, I'm pounding it down the paint. I'm doing my, and that's why I got my tarps underneath my bucket. You saw I kind of ran the paint up. I always go an upward stroke first. I go back one length. And you can tell when your roller's starting to get a little too dry, it starts doing a tingy sound. You can kind of hear it goes like a real high crackling sound, but that's about all you can get out of one roller of paint. Once again, you kind of dump that on the paint there, do a little roll, spin it, and do a twist. You follow your, so you go right up to the corner there. You kind of back roll, you get a nice, whoops, see I got a roller bump there. Wasn't paying attention, busy talking. But, and we'll show you how to correct that. I go right up to the corner where I'm painting there. And then I'm going to come back, and you notice I always keep my roller over my tarps. Do the roll, I run my roller right over the tarps there. And now I'm starting to do the bottom half of the wall. I can pretty much run this right up to the window tape that I got there. you start hearing that ting and I'm running a little dry. I'm kind of backing up a little bit because I got a couple little drips on there. Do a little twist, running it over. Do it, roll up. Always roll up. If you roll down, you kind of squeegee your paint out of there and you're going to get drips on the floor. Once again. I don't know if the camera can kind of pick up it. The one thing with the roller is you can pretty much roll all the way down to where you're going. So now I'm checking the wall for nice even coating. So I did half up, half down. I got a little run, or a little, I'm running this up right there. So I have that almost as tight as I can right up the ceiling. I've already done that part. When you set your roller down, just drop it in like that. Doesn't matter. There's one other feature I forgot to point out when we were when I was walking through equipment is you have a small can here. You can have a bucket, you can have a different thing, but this is your edging paint here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of paint in here. And I'm going to use this for my edging bucket. And up there, keeping everything over a tarp because we want to keep actually I should have that hanging in there. But once we have this rolled out, you notice I only got about an inch that I need to cover. Some people need a ladder, but once again I kind of angle my brush. I do a little stroke, and since my paint is so close to the edge there, I really don't need too much to dip it in here that much because a lot of paint's on the wall still. I can just run this, I already did it area there. And the corners too. Once you do the corners, you got paint all the way up the corner, and all you have to do really is get it smoothed out in there. So that's pretty much done. Now to tackle that roller bump, that's where the kills comes into play. Roller bumps, once again, is when the roller goes up and hits the ceiling there. Now the one thing I'm going to be careful of is this ceiling's not real bright white. So it looks a little older, and that's part of the assessment thing too, is when you're doing an apartment, look for smokes damage, and does this ceiling need to be painted? In my initial assessment, I looked at it, I didn't really quote it on camera, but the ceiling here is pretty good. It's not real dingy, and if it was smoky, we'd want to be painting the ceiling. And when you paint apartments, you always paint the ceiling first, and then you do the walls. Because the ceiling's a little tougher, it's a little harder to maneuver, and when you're painting, then you get the paint on the walls, and you get that all painted, and then it's easier to edge in with the walls up the ceiling than it is to do from the ceiling over to the wall. So you always paint the ceilings first, and once again use that heavier nap roller. On this particular case, I got a roller bump, and since this ceiling's not bright white, I'm going to be real careful when I spray, because when this stuff sprays out real bright white. So I'm gonna back it off just a little bit and do some little short bursts and cover up that roller bump. If I was real close and I sprayed on it, it'd be a bright white that would stand out a lot better, but you just kind of back off, and I'm kind of just feathering in so I cover up my roller bump up there. I don't know if you can see that on camera, but got pretty good coverage on that. And then you kind of do that with any other type of roller bumps. Or if you have problems and you're going into a unit and where the paint is overlapped on the ceiling, besides getting paint on woodwork, you don't want to get the wall paint all over on the ceiling also. So if you have a real bad edge where the paint goes up on the ceiling, you could really take this and kind of feather in all the way along the corners here. And then so you have white and white on the walls, and then you recut in your corners so you have a nice ridge there. The other thing that this kills is great for is for when we have, for instance, if there's crayons on the walls, or if there's dark marks, and say there was some mold or something on the wall, and we wipe off the mold. This is kind of a blocker. It'll block the color from coming back through the paint. So anytime you have dark marks, that's why we put the can of kills in your painting kit to cover those things up. And then as far as ceilings, we also use a product called Fresh Start. It's almost like Kills, although it's more of a latex paint. It doesn't have the fumes that Kills does, but it's a blocker. It blocks the yellow from coming back through the ceiling and tarnishing the ceiling in years to come. So So that's some of our blocking agents that we use. So we're continuing on. We sprayed this roller bump, and we got white stuff on here. And once again, we're going to recut in this edge so that we have a nice clean corner there. So we got white on the ceiling, white where it's supposed to be white, and we got wall color where it's supposed to be. I don't know if you can tell on camera, but as you're watching this wall dry here, you can kind of there's different colors that are popping through here, and that's typical drying. And then what it does is it kind of tells you where you got some of your areas a little thicker and some are a little thinner, so that it's drying. But you'll usually see a little bit of non-uniform coloring on here. But the thing as it's drying, I can kind of tell I got a little bit. Some of my I call it roller mark, is when the rollers kind of overlap. A little bit thicker, so I'm just lightly running my brush over there. But I think it should be fine there. I'm going to just quick finish up this wall here while we're recording. Once again, I'm dipping that in there, and I'm going to run this underneath here. Once again, you got to use a little talent here, and you don't want to do a big brush mark so it goes up on the wood. You don't really see this area. That's not as critical. But you do want to try to keep this close, and you're better off having a little bit of gap where you don't paint than to paint too much. So we got that painted underneath there. And I'll grab my roller again. And once again, setting that roller down like that. And paint rags are always good to have. Yeah, once again, I had that grate down in the bucket. It should have been hanging up on the edge of the bucket there. Doing your twist, that's part of my problem. And I always do your first strokes going up. First stroke's going up, and you go down, and you crisscross over, and really about 3 feet, you know, on a half wall is about all you're gonna get out of a roll. About that much. Once again, you keep your frame side tight, or away from the bucket. You put the other side tight against the bucket. And you notice I'm keeping this pretty clean on this side of the roller. Once again, your first roll always goes up. You gotta watch your outlet covers. You can pretty much roll right along the edge of them and down. That's one of our maintenance radios you just heard there. We are maintenance radio dispatched, and we have different things. And I always run my roller, like I brush that out, but I run my roller along the bottom here, just because the roller gives a nice firmer, or a nice flatter finish versus the brush. Now I'm going to do it quick. We got the paint almost all the way down the register. Now, since we rolled first, actually, we got wet paint that's down almost to the register already, and really you can see how fast this goes. Basically, do a couple dips, and we got that whole thing done. So that runs real quick. Now the thing I'm going to show you here is leapfrogging. We got our leapfrogging. We pull off this tarp, and then we just keep going right along here. So we put the tarp over here. We re-secure it with our tape. And our heat register already had our roll of tape going all the way down. So we do a leapfrogging thing. And the whole thing is trying to keep all three of these tarps all crossed over with each other, so that when we do our roller thing, we can continually keep our roller right over the tarps. So once again, I start in the top part here, pull off my tape. I usually just stick the tape right to my pants here. Then we do the top part of the wall. And You can pretty much do it from any angle. Once you get better, you kind of slap that roller right in the paint. You do the roll. And then you kind of go back over it. You get nice uniform coverage on there. Slap that roller down in the paint. I got the top part done. And the next thing you get, run it up. Cross it over. Actually, it goes, I'm going to extend this out just a tad more. Go back, run it back over here quick. Don't let that roller get too dry. That's the key in rolling. And you need to find out exactly where your perfect height. See, I got a drip one right on the tarp where it's supposed to go. You notice I'm not stepping on the tarps either. Stepping on the tarps is another a no-no, because as I mentioned before, once you start stepping on the tarp, you start getting paint, because that's where your paint's dripping, you get it on your shoes. And you basically get it moved around in the apartment on the carpet. That's our goal. We do not want any paint on the carpet. Run this down. Get that. So once again, if it's a two-person job, you can really get going pretty fast here. You run that up. You got a fresh paint of bead paint on the top there, so you really don't need to dip your brush that much. And you get a nice even coat. So this wall is going pretty fast here. Because I'm shooting a painting video here, I didn't do all my taping ahead of time. Best thing to do is to tape out a room. Tape out a room. Tape, pay, and pull, I call it. Tape, pay, and pull. So you tape it, once again, get a good nice tight bead there. So it overlaps on the wall just a fraction of an inch. And then running and really run your roller right up to it, and I'm just smoothing it out there at the last minute. So that's how that technique works. Pretty fast, efficient. You keep your three tarps going here. As you're moving, you just keep leapfrogging, and you kind of readjust the tarps. And I'm done with this tarp now. I pull this tarp up and I leapfrog it down. Keep a nice continuous path of where the tarps are. Now you got to be careful so you're not flipping your tarps over. You always keep the same side of the tarp up, and you don't flip it over, because we got paint drips on here. We got some runs. If you flip it over, you're defeating the purpose. When we get into the kitchen area, this kitchen happens to be wallpapered. So we have a couple of different things. Number one, we have appliances. Appliances get moved out when we do apartments. Basically, they get carefully scooted out. You have to be careful so you don't damage the floor. Sometimes we have some vinyl floors, and if you pull it, and if you're not kind of lifting as you pull it, you tend to rip it. So be very careful when you move the appliances. The other thing we always do is make sure that we pull this out and we paint behind appliances. We don't paint around them, we paint behind them. And we make sure that we get nice and we don't just scoot down and go along here. We pull the whole thing out and paint down the wall. Same with the refrigerator. Now in this particular apartment, we don't have too many with it, but they have wallpaper. You have to be very careful when you're painting wallpaper, because the problem you run into is some of this older wallpaper that's been there for a while. When you put your tape on the wallpaper, you tend to pull the tape off, and you'll pull the wallpaper right off with it, and you'll have tear marks, so it really damages the wallpaper. So you do have to be careful when you're taping wallpaper. In some cases, when you have little short runs, such as this one, it's only this much visible, you may be better off very carefully cutting in with the brush right versus putting tape on. Another problem I've seen is some on the newer cabinets, they tend to have like a paper veneer on the cabinets. So when you're not working with the front part of the cabinet, most of them tend to be on the side. You have like a paper veneer on the side here. And once again, you go to tape it. And if you're not careful, and if you don't just lightly tack it on there, when you go to pull it off, you pull the paper off the cabinet. So be very careful when you're taping cabinets, and look at the product and see what you have. This forest veneer is a solid wood cabinet, so I wouldn't be worried about taping that cabinet up at all. So that's kind of a quick run on the painting of a room here. Then going back, just a quick scenario over on this side of the wall again. We got our wood trim. And majority of the walls we do have the wood trim here. You notice the tape's nice and tight there. The thermostat I leave on here, and I carefully tape around that. Once again, I get a nice tight seal. You don't want black gaps around with your tape. So you want to overlap the tape onto the wall there. You get a nice tight seal around that. All that cover, pull screws out, drop the plate on the floor right below that. Roll out the wall. You know, obviously we tape off this woodwork first, and tape that down. And then, as I mentioned, we tape, paint, and pull. So we paint the wall all up, like we got going over here. Let me back up over to this area here, since we're working on this wall. I'm kind of jumping around because we're just doing a training video here, but hopefully you get the points. So what I'm going to do is, after I get this wall painted, very shortly after I get this wall all painted, I'm going to pull the tape. And one of the main reasons you want to do that is if, for instance, you shouldn't have any tape that bleeds through. But like right here, I got a small piece of tape that kind of painted, that bled through there. When we pull the tape up, basically we just wad this up and throw it in our garbage. The reason we pull it right away is because the paint's not quite dry, and it's a lot easier to clean up. In this particular case, when I got my blue thing here, that's from before, but I'm still going to clean it up a bit, so you can review what you got going. So I got a nice clean edge there again. Same with the woodwork. After we paint the wall, we pull the tape off. And be careful, because when you pull the tape, you usually have paint on the tape. So my recommendation is you kind of do a paint pull and stick like this. And have a plastic bag is a good thing, because there's paint all over this tape here. And you don't want to just throw this on the carpet, because you'll have it on your carpet. I'm going to throw it in the sink there for now. So you pull off the tape, and once again, if you properly taped, you shouldn't have any problems. Once again, I use this edger for kind of cleaning up and making sure that I'm wiping off the paint, making sure that I got a nice clean edge along there and that there's no paint on the woodwork. Now this drop was here before, but I know I'm responsible for getting that paint off the woodwork, because that's part of the old policy. So I'm gonna. If there's paint on the wood when you leave, I'm not going to get yelled at. So, you know, this drop here is going to take a little bit of time, but it eventually is going to come off. We've got a nice coat of varnish underneath here. Use my fingernail, I don't want to push too hard with this green either, because it'll take the finish right off. It's a pretty harsh green scratchy pad. We're getting it. It's pretty thick hunk of paint here. But it's slowly but surely coming off. And it looks like we almost got it there. Okay. Wiped out the rags to get it nice and clean. Looks like a little bit more on there. It's got some wood grain in it. Yes. Went in for wood grain. There we go. Got the majority of that done. So we go through. I look at my time, and we're doing pretty good here. We got this living room finished in less than an hour, and we're ready to move on to the bedroom. Tell you what, I'm just going to update my paperwork here, because I got the living room done, and I'm going to write down finish the living room, and we'll be back with you in just a minute here. Okay. There, pretty much got this apartment done. We've gone through, we've done a fresh coat of paint throughout the whole apartment. Once again, we taped, we painted, we pulled, we did the prep work. Just going back and doing a real quick analysis. Once again, we assessed the apartment. We looked through it, we looked for problems, we looked to see if there's any drywall repairs that we need to do, and any paint on the woodwork, and we did a full assessment of the apartment. Also, a couple of other points too is bathrooms are critical areas. Making sure that that we have good-looking bathrooms. We don't want any black, mold tends to grow in bathrooms from the water source. We have caulking that gets bad, and you really want your bathrooms to look good. So make sure you do a complete analysis of the bathroom on your assessment. Then we went through and we prepped for painted, if you recall. We went through, we prepped, all the holes, we took our screwdriver, punched them in a little bit more, we filled them in. We tried to make sure that hole's not sticking out. We looked at that, any drywall work that needs to be done ahead of time before painting. You need to do the prepping. If there's holes, if there's bigger holes in the wall, usually I say anything's bigger, bigger than you can stick your pen in, or like a face of a hammer. And we need to start doing drywall patches, and that's going to be probably our second in series number 2 on our videotaping. But drywall is kind of a separate issue. The drywall needs to be done prior to the painting. So we prepped the holes in the drywall, had all squared away prior to put our coat of paint on, because the coat of paint is kind of your final application, and that's when you need to make it look good. So we did our prep, and then we did our tape. We made sure we overlapped the tape. We got all the different areas. Oops, I forgot to pull tape. And I guess that's part of our final cleanup. Once again, there's paint on the edge of here. You can do a little round it up. I mean, there's paint down there, so I don't want to get that done. But you need to check the edges to make sure where you're sitting. And it's always a good thing to just kind of watch. Like I got a little drip there, and we don't want to have drips. We don't have roller marks. We don't have runs. We want a nice even coat of paint wherever we're applying our paint. So we did that, and then after we're done, we're ready to kind of move into the cleanup phase. The cleanup phase is assessing your work to make sure that you're proud of the work that you've done, and then actually doing a cleanup. And I'm going to kind of walk you through some steps on that. Logged in my time, and I'm looking at my clock. I got a pager in there, and looks like we finished this apartment in about 5 hours. So we moved along pretty quick here, and to get this whole process done. And basically, what I'm doing is I'll kind of do a fine finish up on this, but logging in at time out. If I actually went to lunch, so I took off an hour. Actually, took off a half an hour, so I marked off my lunch and used my radio. I radioed into my supervisor and told him I was heading out to lunch, and I radioed when I left, and also radioed him when I got back. So we kind of got to check in with my supervisor to make sure that he knows where I'm at, and just update him on the status of my project, because I want him to know that I'm doing a good job here, and I want to get this done as quick as possible. So the radio is a very key point in communicating with an organization. I'm just going to actually glance through my painting policy here too to see if I've missed anything else. Some of the main things is responsibility. When you take on the department, you're responsible for making sure that you're adhering to this. And then if you're a supervisor, or if there's 2 people in the department, there's always one person that's in charge. The supervisor should assign somebody and said, you're in charge, and you kind of have a little chain of command here. So whoever's in charge is responsible for making sure that the stuff's done. Other procedures. Assessing the areas we painted, we talked about. Ceiling assessment, which was critical, seeing if there's smoke damage, which is the big thing. So looking at that, we talked about using the Kills stain blocking here when need be. Correcting the flaws in the wall, we talked about if there was any holes or any other type of thing. And I'll kind of point out the key phrases here too. Remember the phrase, once the assignment is completed, no flaws should be detectable. So making sure you have a nice smooth there. Cleaning off the woodwork, talked about that. Remember, there should be no paint on any woodwork or non-painted surfaces. Taping off the woodwork. Remember the phrase, tape, paint, and pull. And clean. Blemishes and nail holes. Key phrase, only fill the nail hole, nothing else. We talked about that, walking through that. Removing hardware and obstacles. Utilize the most efficient method to create the best results. Use a scratchy pad or the blue edger to get the paint off. Mold and blocking situations, we talked about the Kills or Pro Block. Sometimes we use Pro Block in doing that. Block the problem so we do not encounter it in the future. If you don't put proper stain blocking on there, it bleeds right through your paint. And it actually could sometimes just show up before you even get done with the wall. Uniform coverage of paint on the walls and ceiling. Make sure that there's no runs, there's no drips. You have a nice uniform coverage on there. When we're using the same paint color the second time, it's usually pretty easy, but watch those roller marks, you know. And the one other thing I forgot to point out, when you are rolling the walls, you're not applying pressure on your roller. You're not squeezing the paint on the roller. Basically, you're just taking the paint off the roller and